This is the Hogue Mini RSK, also known as the Mini Ritter Hogue, and this is about as good as 3-inch knives get. So this is made by Hogue in the USA, designed by Doug Ritter. Doug Ritter used to design knives for Benchmade, and you'll recognize this looks similar to the Griptilian. That was, in his early versions, another Doug Ritter design. At some point, Doug Ritter stopped doing it for Benchmade, moved over, started doing it for Hogue, and so now we have this version here, which is still made by Hogue in the USA, and as I'll discuss, arguably done better than Benchmade has ever done it. This is a 2.9-inch blade, just under 3 inches. Doug Ritter's the guy behind Knife Right, so you know he's going to be attentive to that 3-inch knife law. This is a 2.6-ounce knife with these G10 scales here, and the blade stock is 94 thousandths thick. And the price, remember this is a USA made. This is coming in, the only place you can get this firsthand, meaning on the primary market, is from KnifeWorks, and there it's going to be about 150 bucks. Some versions are 160, a couple versions get a little higher than that, but generally this is a $150 knife made in the USA out of G10, and in this case 20 CV. Most of the ones that you're going to be buying today are going to be even in Magna Cut at about the same price, so it gets even better. These are generally pretty available. KnifeWorks, again, is the only place that you're going to be able to buy these firsthand. And usually there will be at least one mini RSK version that's actually available to buy. The full-size RSKs are a little bit harder to get your hands on. Those tend to sell out of stock. Not like a sprint run, but when they go up, they'll sell out within a day or two, and then you gotta wait until they come up again. And that's happened more since they started making these in Magna Cut. Again, this one's 20 CV, it's a couple years old, but everything that I say applies to the Magna Cut version as well, except the steel is even better. So let's start with the blade here, because this is going to be a pretty gushing review. This blade is a simple standard drop point. Got a big fat belly here, got a point that comes just above the pivot, and a nice gradual curve up to that point. You've also got some great jimping across the spine here. Not too sharp, not too light, just very easy to get your thumb on. This blade shape, one of the things I noticed when I was about to do this review, is actually very similar to the PM2 if you just look at the bottom. It holds that flat for a little bit longer, but it's got the same idea of a significant flat that curves up a little bit toward the tip. You can think if you were to straighten this back angle here and put a spidey hole in there, this wouldn't look that dissimilar from a PM2 blade. And just like the PM2, this blade shape does everything really well. The blade edge is just always exactly where you want it to be. The tip is thin enough to pierce without being dainty, and you see it does get pretty pointy here, and this does pierce into things quite well. It's great cutting through material. You can follow that edge really easily. And even though it's far from a Wharncliffe, it's a small enough blade, you can get close enough to that blade that I can always either drag the tip into materials, which is usually how I'm going to cut a box or something like that with this, or I can use the bottom of that belly and sort of cut through like this. But honestly, it's easy enough to get down to that tip because the knife is so small. You know, Ben Banter has that rule, can you get your pointer finger to the end? You can absolutely get your pointer finger up to the tip of this knife and use it sort of like you would a Wharncliffe and just drag that tip through things. But really the reason that this blade is so good is the grind here. So awesome stonewash, awesome execution on, you know, the laser marks, the whole blade shape. The grind is nice and even. It's a good looking blade, but it's a really good performing blade. So 94,000, so you're already starting from basically TRM Neutron stock. And I will tell you, this thing, my experience, actually cuts even a bit better than the Neutron. I like the Neutron, but one of the complaints you can have is even though it's got thin stock, they grind their blades a little flat. It doesn't get quite as keen behind the edge as it could if they ground it more aggressively. That might be intentional. You might want to keep some toughness behind the edge, but this guy here gets super duper sharp behind the edge. I actually remember Anthony Scullambrini at Everyday Commentary even saying that, I think he was talking about the Mini, but either the Mini or the full size, he mentioned the edge got so thin that he actually thought it was a little too thin behind the edge, and he was worried about it being fragile. I have never had that issue, but frankly, given how well this thing cuts, I could almost believe it. This thing just glides through material like very few other blades I've had. Factory edge has been great. If I just compare this to Hogue's other popular knife, the Deca, it's not even close which of these is the better cutter out of the box. It's not like this one cuts poorly, it cuts quite well, but this is a fantastic cutter, and it is a combination of the blade geometry of having a relatively tall blade that can drop from that 94,000 stock, so thin stock, big blade, means you got lots of space to get thin behind the edge, and then you've got that great versatile blade shape there, and this thing just sings. Every single EDC task that you would want to use a 3-inch knife for, assuming you're not going to be jabbing this through concrete blocks, this thing is absurdly good for it. But that might not even be the best part of the knife, because this handle is so good. The handle doesn't look like much, but if you look closer, and I'm going to bring up the full size here in a second, there's lots of really, really good details here. Now remember, this is basically Hogue's version of the Griptilian, and so you would expect it to be grippy, and it is. This is obviously the full size, way bigger knife. Separate review coming for this one. I'm showing this so you can see the pattern. There's the starburst pattern around the pivot, where you got horizontal lines radiating out from that pivot. And then in the middle, you've got a sort of cross-hatch part where you've got concentric lines going perpendicular to those striations. This area is super grippy. This area is a little grippy. And on top of that, again, I'll keep showing this one because it's easier to see. You have contoured G10 scales. It's not an aggressive contour, but it's enough that you absolutely feel it. And you can kind of see it if you look down from the top there. You can see how, the belly of those scales is sticking out further than the edges. Again, everything that I said there, it's all absolutely in place. You can sort of see it there in the mini version as well. And the contouring, look at how thin those G10 scales get right near the axis lock, and how it's a 3-dimensional contour. It's not just rounding. There's also contouring going, toward the front of the knife and away from the back of the knife. It's this very complex three-dimensional shape with micro milling on top of it. And then you've got a handle design that the closer you look, there's more and more to it. It looks like a fairly neutral handle at first. You got a pretty good front finger choil here. But then you notice it actually swells, the whole knife swells right here. This doesn't go straight, this swoops up a bit, this swoops down a bit, and the way it works, it actually bows out a bit and then comes back down toward the butt. You got a little bit of jimping back here. And when you grip this knife, it just fits so insanely naturally in the hand. For a 3-inch knife, I get 4 fingers on this, no trouble. This jimping is then perfect. My pointer finger and my thumb here lock me onto this knife, and it feels like I'm holding a river rock with some grip tape on it. It's just, these edges are, they keep the edges flat enough. They don't contour it so aggressively that the whole thing rolls in your hand. And then this texture really does provide grip in a way that this knife wouldn't have if it was a smooth texture. The fact is, this handle is just so easy to grip, so natural in the hand. If you want to pinch up, you can put your middle finger right there, pinch up on the blade, hold it just like that, get right up close to the edge. If you want to hold it back here, you can. It's part of the reason the cutting experience for this knife is so good. It's just whatever you push it through. You've got a super slicey blade that passes through material easily, and then you've got a handle that is contoured so well that it feels very natural and easy in the hand. But then unlike a lot of contoured handles, you've heard me complain about this a bunch. I don't, in general, love contoured handles because, like the TRM Shadow, they can come off as slippery. They can roll in the hand too easily. This, they fixed it with that grip texture. And so this, you get the benefits of a flat scale in that you get that secure grip, you get that texture there, and you get the benefits of a contour scale with the just better hand feel. Like just as an example, I've got flat scales on my TRM Neutron. That's because the TRM or Three Rivers Manufacturing only puts this peel ply texture on their flat scales. Their contoured scales get rounded the whole way. And so if I get contoured scales, they're going to roll in my hand. These don't roll in the hand because they've got that texture. It's just a fantastic handle. And every single time I pull it out of my pocket, you just grab it and you can just pinch it however you want to. It just falls into your hand. You grab it whatever way you're going to grab it, and it just works, and it just doesn't move. And then you push it through stuff and it still doesn't move. And then you got to push a little harder, so your thumb goes right up onto this ramp and it's just naturally there. And this is, you know, especially on my small knives, I really like having finger choils. I don't mind this one doesn't have a finger choil, partially because the way they've flattened out the area or sort of narrowed the scale right in front of this pivot and then put that texture there, I can pinch this really nicely and get most of the benefit I would want from a finger choil just by pinching the blade right there. It's just a master class in handle design. I can't think of a better handle, just looking at the handle, on a knife of this size. The only one that I can think of that might come close in my experience is the Native, which is really trying to make a knife that is meant to be pushed a little bit harder than this one. It is a bit of a chunkier knife in general, thicker blade stock, but really these are two pretty elite handle designs here. The other one that I just have to mention, because I did say it was the best EDC knife of 2023, the Demko Shark Cub, is similarly super secure, super robust in the hand, but it's doing it a different way. It's doing it through these ergonomic lines with a flatter scale, whereas this one, the contouring and texturing on the scale is doing more of the work. Both exceptional knives, both do very similar jobs really well. This one feels a bit more like, the traditional EDC knife we've known for the last, 4 or 5 years. This one feels a bit more like the new hotness. You're not going to be disappointed with either of them. But really, this isn't that long a review because there's nothing to really criticize, and there's not a ton more to even say about this knife other than the fact it cuts extraordinarily well. The blade is extraordinarily natural. Oh, one more thing to mention, the action. On top of everything that I just said, this axis lock implementation, Hogue's Able Lock, snaps out and drops, as well as any axis lock you will find on the market. Hogue does a great job with their axis lock. They use this little biohazard stud here that does a really good job of just catching the edges of your finger without being too rough. Same design on the lock here. Sticks out just far enough. These studs look great in profile. They just look super industrial and tough. Easy to grip this. And it falls shut, it snaps open. The detent is a little stronger on this one than a lot of other axis locks. I think it has to do with the thumb stud placement. So I'll compare this, because of the way they put this thumb stud and because of the spring tension here, even if I try to fail this, meaning I try to push it as little as possible so I can try to overcome that detent and not have it deploy, I can't. This is an axis lock that you can't fail to deploy if you get past the detent. Compare that to the shadow here. I can push that shadow out all day and it'll just get stuck there. I have to forcibly flick the shadow open, and the shadow's not bad. And that is a typical axis lock action. This one is just exceptional. And this and then the full size one, I don't know what Hogue is doing differently on these guys compared to the Decas, but the action on the Deca is fine. It comes out easily, it goes back easily, but I can fail the Deca. Doesn't snap out as nicely, doesn't drop as nicely. Whatever they're doing on these Griptilians, this is the most satisfying axis lock action that I have, I think, ever handled on a knife, and certainly ever handled on a knife this size, because the only ones I can think of that would be better are the full-size Ritter Hogue and the Tactile Knives Co. Maverick review coming up on that one. I happen to be very happy with it. But that's really all I've got to say about the mini grip, the Hogue Mini, or the Mini Ritter Hogue, the Hogue Mini RSK, whatever other name you want to pin on it. This would be a fantastic knife at $200. This would, I mean, this would be a approaching best in the industry sort of value at $200. And this would still be a very good knife at $225 or $250. The fact that this is direct from the retailer, $150, and it's a great retailer to boot. Knifeworks seem to be pretty good people, and I've always had great experiences with them. And on the secondary market, you can get these for like $120 because they've made tons of them. They've been making them for years. People beat the snot out of these things. If you're at this price point in the knife market and you want a small EDC knife, there's no reason not to have one. If you've got $150 allocated for your knife budget, you're going to be happier, and you want a 3-inch knife or something around that 3-inch mark, you want an easy EDC carry, there's not going to be a better $150 that you're going to spend on a knife than this one in that price range and at that size. It's just, you know, if I compare this, to sum it up, I'll compare this to the Deca here, because the Deca is kind of the new hotness. The Deca does a lot of things very well. This blade is very good. This handle is very good. The action is pretty good. It's light, it's easy to carry, it's solid. It doesn't try to do anything too much and executes everything it tries to do very well. This guy also doesn't try to do very much, but it absolutely nails every single thing it tries to do. The blade, the handle, the action, it's all a perfect execution of what they tried to do. I really don't have enough good things to say about this knife. Just a huge fan, hugely recommendable. If you're even curious, go out and try one. If you don't want to pay $150, just hang around the secondary market and buy one for $100, $120. Beat the snot out of it. You'll love it. Hope this was a good use of your time, and I will see you again soon.